All right, so if we're going to go overhead, first thing we have to do is make sure that it's safe to put somebody overhead. So we have to look at overhead, mobility, and stability. We've got to separate the two out, and there seems to be a lot of controversy about overhead mobility. Is it a mobility restriction or is it a stability restriction? The thing to keep in mind, if it's mobility, it's there all the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at overhead in a few different positions. First, we start out feet together. We're going to grasp a dowel with the hands directly over the shoulders, elbows fully extended, wrists neutral. And all we're going to ask is that they lay the wrists flat on the ground above their head. We're looking at this on an extended hip, extended knee, and what we're keeping an eye on is the lower edge of the ribs. Are the ribs flaring up towards the ceiling or are they gliding up towards the head? Towards the head's okay, towards the ceiling we have a problem. Second position, we're going to flex the hips slightly, flex the knees, and bring the feet directly underneath the knees. We're going to do the same thing with the upper extremity, go all the way up to the ground, and again we're watching the ribs to see if they're flaring to the ceiling or gliding towards the head. Third position we're going to look at was the hips flexed above 90 degrees, feet off the ground. And again, we're going to the ground and we're watching the rib flare. If we consistently are seeing that rib flare in all three positions, we know it's a mobility issue. If we see the ribs flare in some but not in others, it can't be mobility because position shouldn't change a mobility restriction. Here what we're going to see is an example of an actual rib flare. You can see as Jeff instructs me to bring my arms to the ground, how the lower edge of my ribs flare up towards the ceiling. No bueno. As we change hip positions, bring the hips in a little bit of slight flexion. Now what we notice is we can see the ribs glide up towards my head, but we don't see the ribs shooting up towards the ceiling. I can still achieve an overhead position, but I'm not having to compensate by allowing those lower ribs to flare up. And then as my knees come up above my hips, that flare towards the ceiling is even less. So two completely different responses to the same drill.